I'm the storyteller, and my stories must be told. I have many stories, tales for both the young and old. I have many voices to describe many places. Many names have I, and many faces. In Russia I am Ivan, in Sweden I am Jan. In Germany I'm Johann, in America I'm John. From my many travels I have gathered these tales to teach you good sense when all else fails. Sometimes there are tears, sometimes there is laughter, but always are happily ever after.
Long ago and far away, in a remote and mountainous land, there was a poor village that nestled on the mountainside next to a small river. Everyone who lived in this village was extremely poor. Life was hard for them, and they all had to work very hard every day to eke out a living for themselves and their families. Everybody worked at something. Men, women, even the children would help the washerwomen. Every family had the same problem, how to make ends meet, and each day presented a new battle to find food. Somehow they managed to grow just enough to feed themselves, but it certainly wasn't easy. Whatever each person's skill, whether it be fishing, farming, herding, or making basketware, they would work diligently. But it seemed strange that however hard they worked, nobody in the village grew any richer. The young villagers worked even harder than their elders. The village was very isolated and relied on travelling merchants for buying and selling goods and for contact with the outside world. One day, one of these merchants came into town with a huge cartload of pots. One of the villagers was a young student called Juan. Juan's great ambition was to pass his examinations and become a teacher for the village children. He felt sure that if they learned how to read and write and do arithmetic, they should be able to better themselves and to live more comfortably than their parents. Like everyone else, Juan was terribly short of cash, and he spent half his time studying and the other half scheming how to make more money to further his studies. When he saw the merchant and all the pots, Juan had an idea. He would offer to buy the whole load at a discount price. Then he would sell all the pots to the driver of a team of ponies who came to the village each week to buy goods and take them to the town to sell. Juan reckoned to make a lot of profit from the driver if he bargained skillfully enough. The assortment of pots was great. There were pots of every colour and every shape. By dint of hard work, Juan had managed to scrape a few small coins together, just enough to pay for the pots. It cleaned him out completely, but at least he could do it, and the bargain was struck. Juan was well pleased with the deal. He felt this marked the change in his fortunes. Buy a little, sell a little, he told himself. That's the way one makes money. And these pots are certainly of fine quality. I've bought them at a bargain price and I should be able to sell them well. With a light heart, he went in search of the village auctioneer and found him where he expected to, in the cantina, enjoying a fresh afternoon drink. Juan was well known to the auctioneer. Of course, the village was so small that everyone knew everybody else. But they were particular friends, and Juan happily explained his scheme to him. The auctioneer was pleased to listen to his friend's plan. It sounded reasonable enough, and if there was money to be made, he was interested. Juan asked his friend to negotiate with the driver on his behalf, and the man readily agreed, on condition that he received a small commission for his services. While he waited impatiently for the driver to appear so that he could make his fortune, Juan happily daydreamed about how he would spend his wealth. First, he would buy a fishing boat of his own, rather than work for a fisherman, which he often did to earn some money. And he would catch his own fish, which he would sell, although he would still study for his exams, of course. Sure enough, like clockwork, the driver appeared on his usual day, leading his team of 5 ponies. Their baskets were empty, in readiness to hold all the goods he would buy from the villagers and sell to the rich townsfolk. The driver and his animals had been coming to the village for such a long time that the ponies didn't even have to be led. They would amble in, taking their own time, while their master's thoughts were full of the excellent drink he would soon be enjoying in the cantina, while he exchanged all the news with his friends. That's exactly what he did. The auctioneer waited until the driver had quenched his thirst, and then he told him about Juan's pots. Well, they had to haggle. The driver wasn't so sure there was a demand for pots, while the auctioneer assured him they were of the highest quality. "It's very risky having a load of just one sort of goods," the driver objected. "I like to have a variety, and those pots are so bulky and heavy they will weigh down my ponies." But at last they reached an agreement whereby the driver would take the pots and sell them on commission, and then pay Juan and the auctioneer when he was next in the village. So, refreshed and cooled down, the driver set off for town, his ponies now carrying the heavy burden of Juan's pots. The way was long and steep, and the day was very hot. The driver soon felt the sun's rays burning on his head, while his ponies weren't prepared to walk any faster than they had to in the heat. The days passed slowly for Juan as he worked for the fisherman. He longed for the driver to return with the money he had made. Juan would have a very long wait, because the driver was in the next village drinking up the profits. He was in absolutely no hurry to go back and have to explain what had happened to the money he got for selling the pots. Eventually, he did return to the village, much later than expected, and looking none too pleased with life. He confronted the auctioneer immediately and started to lie fluently. "Look at my baskets. They are full of broken pieces of pottery. What wretched quality they were. They simply shattered with the movement of my ponies. What good are they now? I walked all the way to town for nothing." and swearing he would never again carry a load of pots, the driver stormed off, leaving the auctioneer with the dilemma of having to break the bad news to his friend Juan. Juan, meanwhile, in blissful ignorance, was carrying on thinking out more schemes to make himself rich, rich enough to complete his studies. After a long day of fishing, Juan was stopped by his good friend the auctioneer. Juan was expecting to be given his share of the money from the sale of the pots. His happy anticipation of receiving the long-awaited payment was short-lived, as the auctioneer explained that the driver had returned with excuses, not money. Juan could not believe his bad luck. He listened, but he didn't hear. He was heartbroken. Later that evening, Juan went to the cantina as usual. All my savings, he kept thinking. Why couldn't that wretched driver have taken more care? He was determined to put on a brave front for his friends, who were always teasing him about his grand money-making schemes. "Don't worry," he cried when they began to pull his leg. "One of these days I'll hit upon a plan, you'll see. I'll be so rich I'll pass my examinations and become a teacher." But his friends just roared with laughter. They had heard it all before, and in Juan's heart of hearts he knew it was just bravado. He was as far away from passing his examinations as he had ever been. The next day, he hit upon a plan which he knew would give him the money he so desperately needed, and it would also teach the driver a lesson to be more careful when carrying other people's pots. Letting only his great friend Carlos know of the scheme, Juan led the way to the roadside leading to the town, along which the driver always took his team. They hid behind the bushes and waited for the party to pass by. And sure enough, here they came, 1 man and 5 ponies. Not daring to breathe, Juan and Carlos waited impatiently as the troop passed by, taking its time in the dust and the heat. But when they slowly rounded the corner, Juan and Carlos seized their chance. They jumped out from the bushes, quite unseen by the driver, and unharnessed the last pony from the lead rein. "Now," Juan instructed his friend, "after we have unloaded this animal, you take it to the auctioneer and make sure you get a good price for it. But first, you must help me." Swiftly, they took each basket off the pony's back and then unsaddled it. Carlos was puzzled by his friend's actions, but was quite happy to go along with it. Now Carlos was instructed to place the saddle on Juan's back. Carlos began to protest, but Juan said, "I'm going to play a trick on the driver. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." So on went the saddle, and then the 2 heavy baskets, and they were certainly very heavy. "The poor pony," said Juan feelingly. "Imagine having to carry a load like this every day." He hurried after the other ponies and picked up the lead rein that had once been attached to the last one, and followed the party for some while until he was sure that Carlos had got safely away. Then Juan pulled the rein hard, bringing the train to a halt. The driver was amazed at his animal's behavior until he looked and saw not a fifth pony, but Juan with his heavy burden. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What are you doing?" "I am your pony," Juan solemnly told him. "Many years ago I committed a great crime, and I was condemned to live in the body of a pony for 10 years. This is the last day of the 10th year, so my punishment is over, and I have become a man once more." "Tell me another one," the driver scoffed. But where was the fifth pony? "I am telling the truth," Juan assured him. "I was once a rich and powerful man, but my crime was such my judges devised the worst punishment they could imagine. For 10 years now I have been carrying these heavy burdens. I beg you, release me from this harness so that I may stand upright once more." Well, the driver saw that the saddle and baskets were certainly his. Perhaps the young man was telling the truth. He helped Juan take them off, while he tried to puzzle out this strange turn of events. After all, he had heard many stranger things in the cantina in town. Juan saw that the driver was beginning to believe him and described graphically his suffering during his 10 years' imprisonment as a pony, and how he had suffered at the driver's hands, how he had been beaten and starved and made to work all day, every day. It was a very sad story, and the driver listened with growing shame. How could he have been so cruel to his faithful beast, who was really a man? True, he hadn't known he was a man, but still, had he really been so cruel? He hung his head in shame and begged Juan's forgiveness for his harsh treatment. So Juan made him swear to keep his story forever secret. "Nobody must know I have ever been a pony," he explained, and the driver readily agreed to this request. What a miraculous day it has been, the driver thought. That poor man, that poor man. And he vowed to himself that he would care for his animals much better in future, just in case another one turned into a man. Juan's acting had deeply affected the driver. His guilt was more of a burden than any animal had ever been made to carry. He realized the many wrongs that had to be put right. He never gave one thought to the welfare of his animals. He had used them in a totally thoughtless manner, and now he had a chance to correct all the suffering he had caused. In the meantime, Carlos had quickly led the pony to the village market, where he was able to get a very good price from the auctioneer. After all, there was always a demand for ponies because they were such useful animals. After making sure it was sound in wind and limb, the auctioneer paid Carlos almost the full asking price. This made a great difference to the lives of Juan and his friend Carlos. They shared the money to buy a boat of their own, which they used for fishing, as well as buying and selling goods from all the villages that surrounded the lake. Slowly but surely, they managed to make more and more money, and Juan was able to spend more time at his studies so that he could pass the examination to become a teacher. They still had to work hard, but they were working for themselves now, and that made all the difference. Juan did not forget that they really owed their good fortune to the driver, and he determined that when he could, he would find a way of repaying the man. Sure enough, the driver appeared soon afterwards, this time leading only 4 ponies, and asked the auctioneer to sell him a good beast. "Help yourself," the auctioneer replied. "As you can see, I have several beasts for sale." But none suited the driver. He really missed his 5th animal, whom he thought of as his talking pony. He was such a good animal, such a hard worker, the driver thought sadly. "I'll never find another like him." Then suddenly, he saw a pony that looked exactly like the other one. It was the same colour, the same height, it had the same markings, why, it even answered to the same name. The driver couldn't understand this. If he didn't know better, he could have sworn it was his 5th pony. He needed another pony, but somehow felt funny about buying that particular one. The driver walked away very confused. Juan knew that this was the time to act. He waited until the driver's back was turned and then offered to buy the pony from the auctioneer for the full price, which he could now well afford. And he told the auctioneer just to give it to the driver with his compliments, without saying who had bought it. The driver was delighted to receive this animal and promised it that he would look after it well and would always make sure it had enough to eat, because after all, you never know. Juan no longer schemed schemes or plotted plots. Now that he had achieved his ambition by passing his teacher's examination, he happily taught all his young pupils the 3 R's. But he never told them that he had once been a talking pony.